presidential budget cuts that will now impact hurricane relief and hurricane planning. This can get really bad. Let's break that down. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is The Breakdown. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for Legal AF to make sure you stay up to date on all the current events coming out of this administration. So, a proposed budget cut coming out of this presidential administration can be extremely problematic for areas and states like mine that grapple with hurricanes. So here's the deal. A suggested federal budget is showing a potential cut of 27% to the budgets of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and they are the ones that oversee the National Hurricane Center that's based in Miami. It's also going to slash the budgets of the different agencies that try to understand the impacts of climate change because of course, they don't think climate change is real, right? Meanwhile, living over here in Florida, we're getting worse storms every year. Tampa just got tore up from the floor up last hurricane season. We're about to start another one, but no, really, let's cut more funding. Really. Okay, so it got so bad that every living head of the National Weather Service came out and wrote and shared a statement. They said they were deeply concerned about the current and proposed cuts, and they warned that more than 550 employees have left the National Weather Service in recent weeks, either through buyout offers or through terminations. Basically, folks were getting fired. So they said that leaves the nation's official weather forecasting entity at a significant deficit, down more than 10% of its staffing, just as we head into the busiest time of severe storm predictions like tornadoes and hurricanes. Our worst nightmare is that the weather forecast offices will be so understaffed that there will be needless loss of life. The Florida weather offices altogether seem to be down 16 employees, and that's on top of all the vacancies that are sitting there. So why is this so problematic? First off, these budget cuts are either going to delay or cancel key upgrades that are needed for weather modeling and forecasting tools. So you know that whole cone of uncertainty that all those in the hurricane zone follow very closely? Well, yeah, if you're not doing upgrades to that, then that's going to take away the effectiveness of figuring out what track the hurricane is going to follow, how intense the storm is going to be. Because remember, and you know, this is something I had to learn. I'm originally from New York. When I moved to Florida, I had to understand that a hurricane is more than just a bad rainstorm, right? This is the kind of stuff that gets you dead. And when we hear that a hurricane is coming, we literally, when that thing is out in the Leeward Islands, it ain't nowhere close to land yet, but we're watching because we're like, oh, if the wind hits this way, then the storm may go north. If it keeps going over water, it's going to strengthen. And we're all sitting there making decisions as to whether or not we're going to evacuate based on these reports. And if these reports aren't accurate because the technology is not on point or whatever, they're understaffed, that means people may wait longer to evacuate. And we all remember what happened with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, how folks were stuck at the last minute. Literally, as the storm's hitting, you're sitting on the highway and you can't get out. That means that people will die as a result. This is not play here. I'm telling you, go back and look at the footage from Katrina of people trying to evacuate and getting jammed up in traffic jams with the storm hitting. It is frightening. Okay, you want to be part of that. And also, if people are making the decision not to evacuate because they think, oh, the storm is going to turn or it's not as intense, well, then you get stuck in your house, and then when the power goes out, and the streets are impassable, and the power lines are down, nobody can come rescue you. That's why they tell people to evacuate. Because you get cut off from civilization like that, it's going to take a while for them to come, them being the first responders, to come get you. It's, again, look at the footage from Katrina. Literally. That is what That is what can happen to us on a regular basis if we don't have accurate information coming out of the National Weather Service to determine whether or not we should stay or go, or how seriously we need to take a particular storm. And so when you have that sort of public confusion, then again, people don't have the information they need to make the right decision for their health, their well-being, their families, their homes, etc., right? And so we already have a critical shortage of meteorologists and forecasters, just generally, right? Because the funding cuts have already done that. You have people that are planning on retiring because this is a vocation, right? People don't just drop out the sky as a meteorologist overnight. This is something they've been working on all their lives, and they tend to stay right through until retirement. And so when people retire, you've got to fill that position. And if you're not filling vacancies and then you're cutting more on top of that, what do you think is going to happen? And so when you also start to strip away this money around climate change, which again, people are like, oh my God, climate change isn't real. Yes, it is. The storms are getting worse and more intense. Again, just look at the forecast over the last few years of the types of storms, how frequently they're coming, and how many of them are hitting Category 4 and higher. Okay, those are the storms with the greatest loss of life. And ask anybody on the Panhandle and on the west side of Florida who's gone through hell the last few hurricane seasons. This is serious stuff. And so when you take away the money from the agencies that are studying, how frequent these storms are becoming, how severe these storms are becoming, what sorts of things are impacting that? Are there any things that we as humans can do to stop making these storms more intense? So is it a matter of pollution? Is it a matter of something else? I don't know, but the reality is there's people that study that. They make their whole life doing that. And when you cut those funds and they can't do it, again, we're all in the dark in terms of what do we need to do to prepare for these upcoming storms, and understanding how severe a particular storm is going to be. At Category 1, that's one set of preparation, right? Maybe you'll put some sandbags out, you'll probably get some candles, kind of stock up your fridge. That's one thing. When they say in Category 4 or Category 5, that means pack your stuff, get the kids, get the animals, and get out of town. And you can't, and this is like, when you're making these plans, it's literally hour by hour. If you wait too long, again, the storm can come meet you while you're trying to evacuate, which means you are in a car with rain hitting you 10 different ways from sunrise, flooding, you can't move. And if you get caught in a car in a flash flood, that's not going to end well. Okay. And again, this is not being alarmist. There's plenty of footage for people to go back and see what I'm referring to, that this is a real and very dangerous thing. Okay. So again, we have to understand the severity of what we're dealing with. What's really upsetting and problematic about these cuts is that the most vulnerable populations, of course, always are the ones to feel the brunt. So again, if you are relying on those free alerts that come from the National Weather Service, whether you're hearing it on the radio or on television, whatever the case may be, you need the most accurate information. Not everyone can afford to have some other private entity give them that kind of information. And if you're giving incomplete or delayed warnings, again, that puts people in a bad situation because they can't plan accordingly. If they got to buy a whole bunch of plywood to nail over their windows, you can't just do that at the last minute, okay? Not everybody has the hurricane impact glass in their house, which would be amazing, but a lot of people can't afford that. It's really expensive. Some folks don't have shutters. If you got the fancified, you hit the button and the whole thing battens down the hatches. That's amazing. Most people don't have that. They either have the old school shutters where you got to get a huge ladder and get up there and start nailing one by one. Or again, most people who are under-resourced, it's a matter of plywood. And again, you got to get up there and start nailing. That is not something that happens overnight, and you've got to cover every single window in your house. Again, this is real talk, folks. This is really, really disturbing. And most importantly, it's that lack and loss of public trust. Because if people can't count on the government for accurate information, Where are they going to turn? Is it going to be some random person who doesn't really have the expertise and makes the situation worse? Is it going to be, well, I'm just going to ride it out no matter what it is, and then you end up dying in your house? As we saw again with Katrina, I keep going back to that because that was one of the biggest failures in terms of hurricane prediction and hurricane safety that we've seen in recent history. And this administration is lining us up to have many more of those. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this was The Breakdown. Make sure to subscribe to Legal AF.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.